To say it's been a while would be an understatement. It will have been 6,398 days since John McGlynn, Mark One's Raith Rovers side, visited McDiarmid Park with a team including Renton, Dingwall, Todd, Andrews, Davidson, Wilson, Winter, Sloan, Hislop and Templeton, and our last visit to Perth for a Scottish Cup fourth round visit which had been rearranged. And while the team were well beaten 3-1, there was consolation in that day that nobody got arrested after the game that time. But of course, in true Scottish football style, we're back, and we're back with 3 trips in the one season, starting with Tuesday night's penultimate League Cup game in the group stages. This, of course, is the Oh No 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 podcast. I'm your host this evening, Robbie Weir, and we've got the new host as well, the Michael Parkinson of podcast, shall we say. We've got Scott Fleming. How you doing, Scott?
I feel much more comfortable in this position of being asked the questions than asking the questions. But no, it was something different, I suppose. But no, as I say, good to be back home. Obviously at my parents' house as well, just for a week at home, and get to 2 Rovers games this week. So it'll be good to get back to a couple of the games and hopefully some positive results after obviously what happened last week.
Yeah, I think you got that sort of like from both myself and Duncan, and sort of it's really hard when you're hosting to sort of balance out, because you want to make your own points, but also at the same time, it's tough because you obviously need to let other people respond, and yeah, it's a fine art. See, when you do stuff like that, it makes you really appreciate how good David Hancock is at what he does in terms of Raith TV. Like, it sounds so strange, but everyone sits there and everyone probably thinks like, oh, I'd love to ask that question or that question. But see, when you're actually in that position, very, very different. And we're only doing a podcast. It's like no pressure here. We're all pals. So, and of course, we've got Leslie Maven. How are you doing, Leslie?
Absolutely fantastic. I'm going to put the usual apology out in advance. 2 apologies today. One, I'm using the same webcam as last time, which for viewers who were on last time might have thought it was some kind of Black Mirror subliminal advertising for the new top. And it kept like zooming in and then flickering red and blue. So I've got the same top today, and I've got a slightly different red and blue top. So we'll see how that goes. Also, we've got some very aggressive gulls nearby. I've had to open the window because it's flipping roasting over here in Oban. So if we get any noise coming from outside, you will know that's what that is. But no, very, very good to be back on, and looking forward to talking with you both for the next hour or so.
Yeah, we'll hope that the tourist bandwidth isn't used up, taken away from Raith Rovers chat and going towards these outlanders that have decided to come in and steal your internet, Leslie. So yeah, just to start us off, a look back at the weekend. Rovers not playing, of course. We had the sort of free weekend, but what did you make of the last minute winner for St Johnstone, Scott? It looks like it had been a hard fought game, but St Johnstone seemed to dominate it. Do you think that makes it pretty clear cut that it's sort of win or bust now for Rovers?
Yeah, I think it probably does in terms of our progression. I think we all know that usually in this competition you need minimum 9 points to be, especially if you're going to be 9 in that second position, and usually a decent or a healthy enough goal difference as well. But I think when I seen that St Johnstone had scored late on, to be honest, like, you're going into that game that St Johnstone are playing technically a League One side. I know Inverness are obviously, they've been in the Championship and the top flight in recent years, but I think going in, I was already going in knowing that St Johnstone are probably going to pick up 3 points anyway. I was just hoping by the time it got to like 75 minutes, actually, if they come out with just a penalty win, then we'll take the fact that they're only on 5. Because at the end of the day, East Kilbride lost to St Johnstone, so the maximum they're going to be on is 9. And they obviously went and beat Elgin at the weekend as well. So, and they've now to play Inverness. So I think going forward, we are probably going to need to get the 6 out of 6 if we're being realistic. But at the end of the day, even after Tuesday night and kind of reflecting on things as well, I would even just take the fact that even if it was a draw, get to penalties on Tuesday, it's more the fact that now I'm wanting to see us progress in terms of just performance-wise going into the league season. Because if we do get through, there's a chance that you're probably, if you're not going to win the group, you're probably going to get like Rangers or Celtic away or something like that, and you're probably not going to progress after that anyway. So yeah, it might be a good thing in terms of financially to get that, but I think for me, I'm just looking now for the last two. If we can get two positive results, whether it's 2 draws or a win and a draw or whatever, I would take that, and as long as it means that we're going in ready for Queen's Park on the first week of August.
Yeah, for me, it was a real indication that sort of St Johnstone have a lot, and we're going to talk about this naturally going through it as a preview game, given their opponents coming up. But it shows that they've got a real multiple strings to their bow, so to speak. So I think that they've got the ability, when you bring on Stevie Mallon and then you've got Uche up top, Uche just absolutely rolls the centre back. That's something completely different to, I'm going to guess, what the likes of maybe Sidibe or Mackenzie Kirk, for example, can bring to the table. Even Jamie Gullen, it's not really his game. But yeah, we'll take a look at them in a bit further detail, of course, coming up. And the other game, Leslie, East Kilbride still in a bit of a roll. I know that you didn't make the post-match podcast, much like myself. What have you made of their sort of group stage performance, without dwelling too much on the sort of previous game, because we don't want to send people into a depression going into this game.
They've done extremely well, and I think we're probably seeing with them what we see quite often with the teams that come up through the pyramid, which is that if they can get through that playoff, they often tend to do very well in the following season. And I mean, I would not be surprised if East Kilbride go on and win League Two. And there's some cracking players in that squad, and I know that Mick Kennedy and Cy Ferry are kind of figures of fun / figures of hate among opposition fans, but they're actually pretty canny with regard to what they do. There's a lot of footballing nous there. There's a lot of games that Mick Kennedy in particular has won against bigger opponents. So they absolutely know what they're about. There's a guy, John Robertson, he's some talent. And Ozzy C, again, another figure of fun who's actually got a bit more about him than you might think. And so, I mean, there's a quality squad there. And, again, that they've started well. And like I say, I think clearly losing to a League Two side who've just come up is not good. But I reckon they will be at the top end of League Two come the end of the season rather than the bottom end.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see how they get on against Cali Thistle, because they ran St Johnstone close. And I know that it's scant consolation, but we created so many chances against them. I know that's been done to death, but it's just, if we make them count, it's a completely different situation that we're looking at here. But they got the points. They deserve the credit for the way that they approached the game and went out and played with a certain strategy. You can't take that away from them. And ultimately, I think there was a lot to look at from a Rovers perspective, a lot of food for thought. Coming out of that last game in terms of the performances, just needing to be more clinical, but also as well the tightness at the back and just the mentality. I know that you guys have all sort of covered it, so we'll try and not go over that too much. For me, just looking ahead to the next couple of games, I think there's less concern going in now just with the permutations. A lot of the time you can get hung up upon like who's in second place, what's going where. Other games, now we don't really need to focus on that. It's all just because even if we do get the 2 wins, you still factor in the goal difference, and that's going to make it a tough one in itself, given St Johnstone have got to play an Elgin team who by all intents, outside of the likes of Dundee, are just currently unable to win games in the group stage. So yes, naturally we'll look ahead to that in due course. If we can get a win against St Johnstone, again, we'll come on to this game in a moment, but then all the better. But you can't look too far ahead at the moment, given the circumstances. So yeah, with a view to the Saints, just in terms of the summer business that they've brought in. So of course we're very familiar with Jimmy Gullen, Sam Stanton, and Regan Tumulty, who have all sort of former Rovers. The first 2, of course, playing for us last season, mostly, shall we say. Jack Baird, Morgan Boyce coming from Morton, Rhys McAleer comes in from Livingston, and an injured Stevie Mallon, who's been out for the last couple of years and is now seemingly did pre-season with Rovers and has now decided to join St Johnstone. And then there's the less known, the likes of Cheikh Diabate, Matty Folds, I think it's Louis Lloyd, and Toby Stewart, who's came in from Portsmouth, I believe, on loan. Stevie Mallon, Leslie, just obviously, as I say, trained with ourselves. Really the potential to be quite a key player for St Johnstone. Feels like a marquee signing, would you say? What are your thoughts on that deal? Naturally, he's had his fitness concerns before, but what do you make of Stevie Mallon if they can get him fit and the type of player that he is?
He's one of these players who, if you can get him fit and keep him fit, will absolutely stroll the Championship. So we've seen again in recent seasons. I know that we're talking about players in a different position here, but Louis Moult, you would probably said exactly the same about him at the start of the season with Dundee United when they came down. You know, this is the kind of guy you think, a guy that's had a lot of injury trouble. Guaranteed Moult wasn't in a position where he hadn't kicked a ball for 2 years, but the same kind of thing. You think this is a player where if you can get him fit, if you can keep him fit, then he's going to absolutely stroll it in. Right enough, he came in and he set up the first goal. I mean, he set up the first goal, the only goal. You know, he set up the goal at the end, which getting an assist on the getting his name on the assist sheet right away. So I mean, like you say, St Johnstone's business over the summer has been interesting, and it kind of started out. You're kind of thinking, what are they doing here? And they were effectively just kind of hoovering up what you would have thought of as being good, solid Championship players. They were doing what Hamilton were doing last summer. They were bringing guys in, you think, these guys are great, but they're not going to win you the league. But then they've kind of turned the wick up a bit in the last few weeks. And I will just say as well, I was impressed with the goalkeepers. I was following the highlights, and I know that St Johnstone were pretty dominant against Inverness, but I was impressed with Toby Stewart, and he's a long line of good Portsmouth goalkeepers going back as far as guys like Alan Knight and Shaka Hislop and my hero Yoshikatsu Kawaguchi, who played in goals down there for a couple of years. So latest in a long line of very capable Portsmouth goalkeepers. A couple of great saves, and clearly, you know, Valakari and his staff obviously think he's an upgrade in Josh Ray, so we'll see. But no, it's, as I say, interesting business, and Stevie Mallon's one that maybe takes that to another level. A bit annoying that he was training with us, and then the parachute payments and the US money and the chance of winning something maybe lured him along to the tee. But yeah, no, I think, as I say, one of these signings where if you can keep a guy fit, of that quality fit, he will absolutely stroll it at this level. Just to say, final thing, it can of course go the other way. You know, seen people like Aidan McGeady at Ayr, Victor Wanyama at Dunfermline. It can go the other way too. So, yeah, if you can keep him fit, the quality is absolutely there.
Yeah, I noticed. I don't know which news outlet it was that was touting Wanyama still might be on the cards for Dunfermline, so we'll need to keep an eye on that one. But with the goalkeeping situation at St Johnstone, what for me strikes me is that they've gone very young with both their goalkeepers. I mean, Ross Sinclair, I don't think he's too old. Yeah, I mean, he was, 23, 24-ish. And then Toby Stewart,
obviously. Like Montrose or something?
I would need to have a check on that. I'm just have a look on his profile here.
I'm sure he went out on loan somewhere.
I'm not too sure. Again, wouldn't surprise me though. But yeah, just to go that young in a key position, particularly given last season, so much was made of the experience for St Johnstone at the back in terms of their goalkeeping position, wholesale changes across their defence. I mean, for you, Scott, they've brought in Baird and Boyce from Morton, and then of course we've got a familiar face there and Reagan Tumulty. Diabate's also a defender, as well as Matty Folds. Both of those have came from down south. What have you made about that in terms of their sort of defensive setup? Because it's very much wholesale changes. They do have the Bozo Mikulic, I think his name is, who's out long-term injured at the moment. I think a lot of their fans are sort of waiting for him to come back. They're just sort of saying he's going to absolutely stroll this league. But to go for that sort of the sort of tried and tested at this level, what did you make of their summer business on that front?
Yeah, I think it was always going to be interesting with St Johnstone on what way they were going to attack their summer business, because like we always see it season on season being in the Championship, right? Who's coming down? Is it We were all. Well, I'll speak for myself, but I was gutted that Ross County came down and it wasn't Livy that stayed down on a few factors. But the factor was that the main one for me was the fact that Roy McGregor's likely to just go and open his wallet and just go, right, well, I didn't want to be in the Championship for more than one season, so we need to get back up. Which he has done to a certain extent. I still expected him to do a wee bit more than he's done so far, but St Johnstone, on the other hand, when they started signing the likes of Boys and Jack Baird and stuff like that, it's no somebody like St Johnstone wasn't the team that I was expecting to be doing that. I just thought, especially with them having somebody like Valakari in charge, I was almost impressed that he went that way, because it was like, he's going for guys that are proven in this division, rather than going, oh, well, I want to go and bring in guys for other leagues that maybe he knows, but whether they're good enough to be knowing what it's like going to Morton away and all these sort of places, like, you never know with these guys. So I suppose somebody like Diabate is going to be a sort of known. He's not really a known quantity to somebody like myself. I don't know about anybody else, but so I know that somebody like Morgan Boys is able to handle this division. So that's what I'm saying. I think it will be interesting to see how they get on. And as Leslie touched on as well, they went and got a young keeper in from down south also, who seems to be doing okay so far. But I think for them, if they can keep, along with this defence that they've got that is fairly inexperienced, but also a mixture of experience in there, if they can keep guys like Jason Holt around the place, these guys, well, Jason Holt, I'm sure, was in that Rangers team that got promoted out here. So he's won the league, and he's been in and around big clubs in these leagues as well. So, and Stevie Mallon as well. We know what he can do also. So I think St Johnstone have done a decent bit of business in the summer, but I still thought they might have done a little bit, not more, but just a little bit of a higher quality to try and make sure that they're going to get themselves out of the division. I just think that it's going to be a little bit more of a wait and see with them, because I know a couple of guys that are Saints fans, and they've been saying the same thing of, well, it sounds like we're going to lose like to Mackenzie Kirk, Uche Piezo doesn't sound like he's maybe going to be there by the end of the window, because is there someone in he's got a relegation clause, but it's open until all the way to the end of the transfer market or something, so he could be there for the first 2 games of the season, but then could be gone. So I think we're going to have to, with them, just wait until the end of the window to see what actually they are looking like, much like a lot of the teams, because in the Championship, you know how much that teams kind of rely on loan deals, and I think that's the way that we're going to be looking, this going by how we look now. Also, teams like Morton are not even getting half a bench right now. So these sort of teams will be going into the loan market. Whether St Johnstone look at that once these guys leave, I don't know. But I'm fairly satisfied that we personally, when we come up against a St Johnstone, I'm not going in worried that they're miles ahead of us in the same league or anything like that. I do think that they're a decent side, but I don't expect them to be pulling up trees in this division going forward.
Yeah, I mean, with the Uche situation, the Courier, I think they were sort of saying that he'd been offered a new deal, but I do think that you're right. I think that's a common thing across like the St Johnstone squad, that a lot of them do have these relegation release clauses, and they're just kind of ticking them off. I think Svedberg was another one that had sort of had one of those in his contract, and he's been able to. They've been able to retain him because effectively it's gone past the date and he's still there. I think that's probably a big thing for St Johnstone from their perspective, though. The fact that you could have a guy like Simo Valakari could have easily walked away, but he sort of said, "No, I'm here for the long term," and I know that they're probably one of the most stable clubs in Scottish football in terms of when you look at their outlet, their consistency over the last few years. The way that they've been able to make money and been able to sort of develop themselves, it feels like one of those ones where a lot of the time you'll see clubs come down and they will effectively use it to kind of clear the decks. I know Dundee United did that a few seasons back. It's for me, I think that's probably what they're going to do over the next couple of windows, and naturally they'll be looking to go for the league. I know that you've mentioned there Ross County. To be honest, I feel like the last few transfers for St Johnstone have probably started tipping the scales for a lot of people back into their favour. County seem to be signing. I know that they got the lad Lindsay back up the road. He should be an outrageously good talent, but even then, again, they're probably looking at Stevie Mallon saying exactly the same thing if you can keep him fit. And one thing about Diabate as well, it's kind of a bit like J Rowe and Richard Chin in the sense that it's always a good indicator when you sign players from down south. And I know that you get a lot of comments about my nan could do this in Scotland, particularly in the top flight, disparaging comments, but a lot of their fans were like just wishing him the best and saying he's a really good player. We would have far rather kept him than let him go. I believe that's the case, but again, time can tell. You never know with players relocating. It's one of those unknown quantities that can sort of factor up. A player might get up here and just it comes into the cold November, December nights, and all of a sudden it's a bit different. Let's talk about former Rovers then, the two that were here last season. So we'll start off with yourself, Leslie. Jamie Gullen, really good start against East Kilbride, hits a cracking free kick and levels the tie before they go on to win, but then against Cally Thistle he has a bit less success. And then Sam Stanton, obviously, I mean, we know all about the danger that Sam Stanton brings to the table, but St Johnstone fans reading their comments so far, they seem a bit underwhelmed by him. What are your thoughts about the whole, I mean, particularly with Stanton? He's, of course, if there's going to be one club that he's going to be trying to have a blinder against this season, we're going to be hallmarked for that, I'm sure.
Aye, I mean, so let's take each of them in turn. So Jamie Gullen, has reverted to his favoured position of the left touchline, and it does look like they're actually using him off the left. And whether that's by design or by accident, I don't know. But so I did notice when I was watching the roundup of the Inverness game, St Johnstone do look very dangerous down the left, and I don't know if that's particularly because of Gullen, but Josh McPeak, again a player who's been poo-pooed in the past a bit by some people, had a great game against Inverness, and Gullen was he had a few chances. I mean, he didn't score, but he had a few chances, and like you say, we know how dangerous he is from set pieces. It does seem very counterintuitive putting one of your forwards on set pieces, because that does then mean you're taking them out the box. But he's so good and so dangerous that we all know how well he can deliver stuff, and I dare say that'll be the case. We've almost got a situation where we've got two players who are going to be returning to face the Rovers with very different receptions, I guess, from the support. So Gullen is one where you kind of thought, he's a very, very well liked player among the fans, among the players, and we'd only offered him a short deal. He'd come back from Dundalk, and you could only really say fair enough when St Johnstone were offering him a longer deal and potentially a bit more money. It's a short career. Sam Stanton is a little bit different. Now, I don't know about you guys. I don't know if this happens in either of your lines of work. I have returned to a former workplace. I know we're playing at McDiarmid Park and not Starks Park. I've had to return a former workplace. Thankfully, I didn't leave under a cloud. But it was a bit weird. It didn't make me motivated to perform any better when I went back there. I was doing a PhD exam at a former university, and I left on good terms. It was quite nice. But there was always that thing when you return to face a former employer. In a way, it's probably good that this is happening at McDiarmid Park and not Starks Park, because you could absolutely see how sections of our support would react to our former number 16 returning, and whether that might just fire him up or whether that might be used as fuel for whatever's going on. The fact it's at McDiarmid Park maybe at least kind of takes the sting out of that a bit. We do have to face him 5 times this season. It would be disingenuous to think he's not going to be fired up for that. As you say, though, he's not exactly set the Heather alight so far. Whether this is just kind of keeping him fresh, keeping him ready for Tuesday so he can tear us a new one, or whether that's just him finding his feet after spending the second half of last season playing against part-time opposition at a level lower, I guess that remains to be seen. But no, two two very different players. I mean, if I had to put my money right now on which one I think would be more likely to score against us, I would say Jamie Gullen, and I would say from a free kick. But, yeah, again, as I say, two very different players that were coming up to face against who left us in very different circumstances. I suppose the one kind of other thing as well, which I think we were chatting about a little bit during the week, Stevie Mallon is probably playing in what you would think of as being the Sam Stanton position, which one reading of that, I think it was Duncan was saying, is that they might be using Stanton a bit deeper, or alternatively alternating them, which is, if that's the case, it doesn't necessarily play to his strength. So I guess we've still got to maybe see a little bit about how they're actually going to try and use Stanton and how he's going to fit in around some of the other quality players that they have.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's be a bit of a fool's game to just focus on the one player, isn't it? Especially with the quality that they've got across the rest of their squad. I mean, even the guys that they brought in, the likes of Svedberg, Sven Sprangler, etc. It's so hard to just focus on one player and say, yeah, they're going to be the key difference maker. And they deserve that, St Johnstone. They deserve the credit that they're going to get, because I think they will be a difficult opponent to play against this season. But at the same time, historically, we've always done well against teams that are at the top end of the division, which you would expect them to be there or thereabouts. As for the game being at McDiarmid Park, I don't think it will really make a difference. I'm pretty sure the guy's going to get dog's abuse either way. And yeah, I mean, it's like he left under a cloud. There's no two ways about it, and I can understand why Rovers fans will probably be queuing up to give him a bit of a bollocking, to be honest. What about for you, Scott? What are your thoughts on the two, and where are you sort of sitting on the whole situation?
Yeah, for me, like Jamie Gullen, like I can never say a bad word about Jamie Gullen, and I think you would find it hard to find any Rovers fan that would say a bad word about him. Not only just as a footballer, but also as a guy. Like, I've only said hello or how you doing sort of thing, like in passing a couple of times at the ground when he's been there, but I've never properly had a conversation. But people that I know that have always said that he seems like a proper, genuine, nice guy, happy to speak to all the fans. Obviously for the kids especially, that's the sort of things like kind of the players don't always necessarily have to do, but it's something that kind of takes you to that like extra sort of appreciation if they do stuff like that. And he was one of the first ones that was always over to sign stuff or give a top away or whatever like that. So in terms of that, yeah, I always when I found out that he was leaving, it was always like, yeah, hope he does really well. I hope he goes and does and scores loads of goals for St Johnstone, just knowing the 5 games against us. But yeah, it's the same thing of when somebody does leave on good terms or has done well for your club, you hope that they do well, because like at the end of the day, I've not got a grudge if somebody wants to go and try, and if he thinks that St Johnstone have got a bigger chance of giving him the chance to maybe go and play in the Premiership, then fair enough. But yeah, I'm never going to hold a grudge on that. The other player, on the other hand, is that's I had more of a gripe with it last season with Stanton, the fact that because it was happening all at one time, like it was just like, oh, 1 week he was on the bench and then it was like that he was either no warming up or he wasn't, and then it was just all the rumours going around, and it got to January and you were just like, can we not just send the guy out on loan? And then it actually came out when he was going to Arbroath that he openly said to the club that he didn't want to be there. So that then made it so much easier for everybody to understand that clearly Stanton didn't want to be there, and it made everybody know that, right, okay, we can just get on with it, everything. He can go in and try and enjoy his football again, and that's the end of it. And at the end of the day, I don't really care about Sam Stanton, because at the end of the day, I love my football club, so if somebody doesn't want to play for my football club, right, fine, go and play somebody else. I'm going to support whoever wants to play for my football club. So that's the way that I look at it and the way that I see it. But there was no denying the first sort of 18 months of Sam Stanton's career at Raith Rovers went as well as it probably could have done. I mean, he played a massive part in the season where we were getting all these late comebacks. He turned, when Vaughan was injured, he turned into be the one that was always scalping the pars himself. So, like, again, at that point in time, he was doing his job and everybody loved him. But then, yeah, obviously other things happened, and he then decided he didn't want to be at the club. But yeah, at the end of the day, he's at another club now, and again, I don't have the same appreciation as I do for Jamie Gullan in terms of hope that he does loads of great things. I don't care what he does, because at the end of the day, he's not at my club anymore. So he can do whatever he wants now, and then we'll see. But I think it will be. I don't think it will be as much tomorrow. On Tuesday, where in terms of what you talked about, the sort of dogs abuse that probably will be expected. I know Jamie Gullan came out in an article recently and said that he's going to do his best to not be standing next to Sam Stanton whenever he's playing against the Rovers, which was quite funny. But yeah, I think
we'll be moving out to the touchline.
I think it'll be the first time he comes back to Starks where it'll probably be more of a thing. But yeah, we'll see. And at the end of the day, it'll just be better if we just go and beat them instead, rather than giving them dogs abuse and then they go and beat us. That's I would rather that we just focused on the game. And Barry Robson's not going to care. Like Barry Robson, I think dealt one for about 5 minutes basically, and brought him on against Falkirk. Basically gave them the lead and then equalised, and then just went, all right, he's going to Arbroath now. So we'll see what it is. But as I say, in terms of Jamie Gullan, I hope he does well. Just accept the 5 games against us, or maybe 7 if we play them in the playoffs.
Yeah, Scott, that sounds like a really mature and refreshing attitude, which, to be honest, once again, I'm going to say it, never going to catch on this podcast. But for me, going to the Gullan one, I'd heard sort of indications that we tried to keep Jamie Gullan and that he was keen to stay, and then seemingly that he decided to go to St Johnstone when they came in with an offer. And I think that's just kind of what you're dealing with when you're at Rovers is the opportunity came up, and look, if he's getting a chance to potentially go up there, and again, with footballers' wages, you never know. And I feel like it's a topic of discussion that people will probably beat to death. But it's really, there's very little you can look into. It's a good opportunity for the guy in terms of that if he does well, he's going to be playing top flight football within the next few seasons, because you can't really see St Johnstone staying down. I think they've got the infrastructure there to get back up. And I feel like across the board, they're probably a club that Rovers, in the longer term, you want to be similar to a St Johnstone, a St Mirren type club where you get that sort of consistency if you can manage to crack into the top flight. Rather than some of the basket cases like Dundee, just very, very funny to watch them at the moment, if you're not already. Stephen Presley just, as Duncan said, sacked already, he just doesn't know it. And I think that's a beautiful way to phrase it. And I think more and more people are just realising he's 2 games is pretty impressive, even by Stephen Presley's tenures, shall we say. Leslie, to take it back to St Johnstone, a very different test, because they're going to be the top seeds. We've played the sort of bottom 2 teams, shall we say, 1-1, lost 1. Very different type of match, this one, for you.
Absolutely. I think you guys nailed it on the post-East Kilbride pod, which is that this is going to be probably the first real test for us of what it's like to play a top-end championship team. It'll be the same for St Johnstone as well. I mean, like Scott was saying earlier in the podcast, Inverness are a competent side. They're a competent League One side. I would expect them to win League One, but they're not yet a championship side. So this is going to be 2 teams who are both going to be eager to see what it is that they can learn and what it is they can get out of playing a team like this. I mean, make no bones about it, St Johnstone, I think, will want to win. If I had my kind of optimistic hat on, which is quite rare for me, I have to say, I would argue that them scoring a late goal against Inverness doesn't change a great deal. I would still say we probably do still need to go out and beat them, realistically, to have a chance of qualifying. It does take some of the permutations away for coming second. Realistically, though, I think it doesn't change the fact that we do maybe ultimately need to, if we want to progress, it's quite clear cut now that we do need to beat them. Whether that does happen or not, I don't know. It will be very different. I suppose the area I'm maybe quite concerned about is the middle of the park and the quality that they have there, what might come through the middle, and particularly depending on the fitness of Lewis Stevenson. I know we'll probably come on to lineups and things after the break, but there's a couple of areas there where I'm maybe a wee bit concerned about if we go out with the same approach and with the same mentality, and actually with the same kind of level of discipline and control in the middle of the park, or lack thereof, that they could exploit that, I think, in ways that that might work against us. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a good test because, like we're saying, it's not a super team, but it's a very well assembled and a team that's got a lot of depth with a mixture of kind of experience at this level and also guys that are bringing a bit of quality from elsewhere. If we can put a good showing in against them, I think I'll be a lot more reassured about the season that comes ahead. But it's definitely a real a very different challenge, I think, and one where we're not going to be able to kind of go all out attack and try and rack up a score as we did against Elgin and as we sought to do against East Kilbride. I think it's one where we're going to have to be a bit more measured in our approach. Whether that suits how Barry Robson likes to play or not is a different matter. And I know we talked a bit about that last season, about him kind of being very much into that pressing thing and us somehow times being a better team that when we don't have the ball than when we do. I don't know if being the sort of underdog might play into our hands a wee bit in that sense. But yeah, as I say, very different test to the two that we've had so far, and it's going to necessitate a very different approach. And I'm sure that after the break, we'll talk about whether or not, that leads to any changes in personnel.
Well, we're not even going to have a break, Leslie. We're just skipping right into the Rovers chat, and I'm going to come right back to you. You mentioned Lewis Stevenson there. Him and Dylan Easton seem to be the sort of major doubts going into this one. If we can class them as major doubts. I mean, we've not really had any updates to the fitness of either of them. I suspect that will come out, if at all, in the next few days. Do you think Lewis Stevenson's in line for his first start of the season if he's able to, or do you think it's maybe a bit too soon? It feels like he's been in training for maybe the last week or so.
I think we saw images of Lewis Stevenson in training, which would kind of give the sort of mood music that we should be expecting him to return. And I think that would settle a few nerves if he is back in time. Again, with all due respect to Josh Mullen, we're again asking him to do something that's maybe a little bit outside his skill set. And as I've said before when I've been on, it's not something I'd want us to be getting into the habit of doing. So I think that would reassure me again a lot if we're seeing Lewis Stevenson coming back in. Dylan Easton, so he was taken off as a precaution, as Callum Smith had said in Raith TV. He'd had some issues with his back. Whether that was precautionary or whether there's a bit more remains to be seen. We probably aren't going to know until the team lines come out whether he makes it or not. We do have options in that area of the park if he doesn't make it. There's guys that can come in and slot in there. Richard Chin being one. Kai Montague potentially being another, although again we might come on to that later. I don't think that's something that we should be doing at this stage, and especially not against St Johnstone. But no, I think of the guys that were missing or our doubts, Lewis Stevenson is the one I would say is probably more important by virtue of the fact that we don't really have anybody actually who can play as a sort of designated left back in a senior position apart from him. Yeah, we've got guys that can play at wing back and who can do a shift. But as for somebody who can play as a left back, he's the only one that we have. And whether we have another body coming in before Tuesday or not, I don't know. Given how things have gone with guys that have been training with us or have been offered contracts with us, I'm looking forward to seeing how Jack Hamilton and Lewis Vaughan get on against Dara O'Connor when he comes out on the pitch for St Johnstone during the week. So yeah, that remains to be seen. But no, I think that would be a really big boost if we can get a designated left back who uses his left foot in there. And if we have Easton, you're going to get his quality, but if not, there are others who I think can step in.
Yeah, I mean, the O'Connor one's intriguing. I know the chat Tex Rover and me have been having pelters back and forth, just for full disclosure, on Pyan Bovril. He's fully of the view that Jordan Doherty should be moved into the role of a creative midfielder. Now, if we sign Darrell O'Connor, that pushes Doherty up. Tex, I'm just going to tell you now, Doherty is not going to be a creative midfielder. He's going to be legs in midfield. He's going to do a lot of running and he's going to do a lot of hard work. If he starts setting up goals, then I will bow down to your superior knowledge and your Excel spreadsheets and whatever. But no, that's that for me. It's not going to happen. Just to come back to yourself, Scott. I mean, do you think for Rovers there's any potential to change the shape? We've kind of, the start of the season, we've gone risk versus reward, but I'm more of a sort of, I would argue a 3-4-3. I don't know how right or wrong I am. I tend to be a bit off the mark from time to time with formations, but do you think there's any chance that we maybe go to something a bit more conservative for this one, or are you expecting more of the same from Barry Robson?
I don't think I'm expecting really Barry Robson to change too much in terms of his setup or how he wants us to play, because I mean at the end of the day he's been pretty much on the money with how he wants to see us playing, and from basically mid-February, once he was a bit more settled with what he had in the building, until now, he's even including a couple of new players this summer, he's still going about the business as it has been the last few months. So I think he'll have also, before the pre-season games and all that, because I think we were in for almost 2 weeks before the Linlithgow game, I think he's probably just been trying to continue that on, and the fact that we had quite a lot of the guys here, so we knew the sort of style we wanted to play, so it's more familiar to them, and just add in little bits here that need to learn how we're going to play. But I would be surprised if we saw a much changed formation or 4 or 5 changes in the team or anything like that. I think Leslie's spot on. I would like to see Lewis Stevenson, if he's fit enough to come in, even just play an hour, 70 minutes, if that's all he can give us now. And then again, maybe another hour, 70 minutes against Inverness, so that then he can maybe play 90 minutes against Queen's Park the week after. As I said earlier in this episode, for me, I think it's right to say that it's kind of glorified friendlies right now for us, because I'm more focused on what we're going to do against Queen's Park in 2 weeks' time. And I know that Barry Robson will give you the answer at every manager will say, oh, we're only focused on the next game sort of thing. But I would rather that we are more concerned about how we're going to play in the league, and this is why I was more focused about this game out of all of the group, because this is the team we're going to be playing this season. So this is who we need to be playing well against and who we need to be matching up well against. So whether he does change it and goes, oh, I'm not want to give my cards straight away to Valakari and know what we're going to be like, or he just goes, no, actually, this is how we play football. This is how I want to play. This is how I'm just going to keep going forward. I don't know, but I do think Lewis Stevenson's definitely one change that I would be bringing. And to be fair to Josh Millen, he's done better than I expected him to do at left wing back, put it that way. I know he's been playing right wing back and he's been getting used in loads of different positions whilst we were struggling with injuries or whatever, but I was quietly surprised with how well he's actually done. Now, I know we've conceded plenty of goals and people have been going on about we've conceded, was it 12 goals already this season in terms of friendlies and the 2 League Cup games, but at the same time, I think we discussed it on Tuesday night, Thursday night, is that we've still got the same back 3 that we ended last season with, and that's where we got 7 clean sheets from February till the end of the season, with the goalkeeper we've just brought in permanently as well. And I think Duncan said it as well, of that's, nobody would have complained if that's your back 3 coming into this season, maybe going and getting a younger centre-half to be on the bench or to be pushing for a position just to keep it competitive, and that we've got somebody to then replace somebody if somebody gets suspended, so or injured or whatever. So I think going forward that's not going to be as much of an issue. I do think it's just the case that early season people are still getting up to fitness. There's a few, obviously we've got J Rowe as well on that right hand side, so somebody like Jordan Doherty's probably still trying to work out a partnership being on that right hand side with him, because he's trying to learn how he plays and when he maybe knows when he's going to run and when he's not going to run and all these sort of things. So And I would say, in terms of just lastly for me, is the other change I would make, and I know that we had a right good discussion about it the other night, was the Sean Byrne propaganda that was going about of how somebody of his quality, I think, needs to be utilised a lot more in amongst our team. I get that Barry Robson said so many times about fitness levels and how I need people running and busting a gut for 90 minutes. But at the end of the day, how many top teams do you see in other leagues where not all 11 players are going to be peak fitness and running about doing everything? And like, you can have somebody that sits in front of the back four, sweeping up, taking the ball and giving it to the better players to go and do stuff. I just would like to see on Tuesday Sean Byrne in the midfield, and it probably allows Scott Brown to go and do more in terms of pressing, more in terms of going into tackles and trying to win the ball back. Because at the end of the day, I know we've gone on over it before, but Ross Matthews and Scott Brown are too similar for me to be playing next to each other. Yeah. And loads of people have said that. So I'm not saying anything new here. But it's the fact that Barry Robson keeps playing with them because they two can give him the legs in the middle of the park. But at the end, even if he wants to play them two, well, then just go and play Sean Byrne behind them, and then it allows them to go and push on more. Yes, it maybe then means that you're going to have to take a McMullen out the side for a game or whatever, but you can work around that at the same time. So it will be interesting to see what he does go with line-up wise. Watch this, it'll be the same 11, but we don't know. I do think, though, that Stevenson and Byrne are the two changes that I would make going into Tuesday night.
Yeah, I think that with what you've said there, I think you're bang on the money. If you bring in Sean Byrne, you know what you're getting, and he can just be that sort of destroyer and come in and just be able to sit, steady things up ahead of any sort of back three, back four that you've got. And that really, if you're keeping Scott Brown, for example, it could be either one of the two, Scott Brown or Ross Matthews. It could be either one of those, and you just say to them, like, you're going to be doing the dirty work, you're going to be doing the leg work. Basically, we expect you to be up and down the pitch, and Sean's going to be there, and anything that comes through, Sean's going to go for. Again, I'm looking at this through the lens of a football fan. I know Ian said on the sort of post-match for the East Kilbride, Barry Robson will obviously forget more about football than we will ever know. And I think that's a very good summary. But at the same time, it does seem like a logical solution to have Sean Byrne come in, particularly for a game like this, where they're going to be having the likes of a Stevie Mallon, where you want a player just to be able to step up and block him off, because he's going to be trying to shoot on sight. We all know what he's all about. We've seen it before. I mean, remember the what was it, the 5-0 spanking that we got at Smithstar, is it? Basically at McDiarmid Park, where he absolutely ran the show and just rocketed one right into the top corner. You mentioned as well Josh Ray. Leslie, I repeat, Leslie, for you, for the lack of any distraction of the goals. Quite a big day for Josh Ray. He's not at the strongest start to his permanent Rovers career, but a real chance to prove a point. The St Johnstone fans really looking to be hammering that home. They seem to have, obviously, of course, written him off, seen the sort of start to last season that he had. But what have you made, and do you think this is a real opportunity for him just to really sort of go and hammer home that the problem might not have been all him, might have been them?
Definitely. So last time he was at McDiarmid Park, he was effectively being told he wasn't needed and that there was no future for him there, regardless of what division they were going to be in. And we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. He himself maybe didn't want to be there by the end of it. If this was the other way around and we'd released a goalkeeper in similar circumstances, you could absolutely guarantee they'd play a blinder against us. And by the way, I'm going to go on record and say I think this is going to happen with Kevin Dabrowski. I think we're going to get to November time and somebody's going to have an injury or a crisis. Kev's going to come in our short-term deal and he's going to play a blinder against us. He's going to be coming for crosses, commanding the box and doing all these things magnificently. Anyway, that's a tangent. No. Back down to earth. Josh Ray has not had a great start to the season. You can't sugarcoat that. Could have done better with the goal at Elgin. Maybe could have saved one of these Kilbride goals as well. How much of that is due to the fact that he's been carrying a wee injury, I don't know. Even if it's a wrist injury or something like that, you don't know if that's playing at the back of a keeper's mind when he's thinking about committing for things and going for things. If he's carrying a knock and if that's just playing on his mind a bit, you never quite know. Maybe I'm being a bit too charitable and a bit too generous there, but I always think that those things sometimes can be at the back of your mind if you're thinking about committing for things or charging for things or coming out and grabbing things. Again, though, I mean, it probably doesn't help that he's had a couple of changes to the defence. I'm a very, very big fan of consistency. That means consistency in the goalkeeper and also in the back line. Like you were just saying a moment ago, Doherty's had to get used to working alongside Jai Rowe. Because of injuries and things, we've had makeshift people at left back as well. That's not going to have helped Josh Ray either. I mean, I agree with Scott. I don't think anybody's been particularly terrible on an individual level defensively, but it is just different people playing in different positions that you might not have had before, and that's all stuff that you've got to figure out as well. It would be nice to see that coming together. As amusing as it would be if Sam Stanton was on the receiving end of it, I do not want to see a repeat of the challenge that we saw on Ethan Ross in a competitive fixture. In a competitive fixture, that's not going to be a stern word from the ref. That's going to be the issuing of a card of the red colour. So I don't want to see that. Again, you could argue that's symptomatic of him not having had a great start to the season. Now would be a great time to put that right and rack up the first competitive clean sheet of the season. And what better place to do that than at the home of your former employer?
Yeah, fully agree, Leslie. And we're all hoping that will be the case for Josh. Moving up the pitch, you mentioned them before, Scott. Richard Chin, do you think there's an opportunity there? And again, I know that you said on the post-match as well, Lewis Gibson still really not had an opportunity to be able to find his way into this team as of yet, and that he's been slightly underutilised. Or are you sticking with Paul McMullen as sort of your sort of more aggressive attacking option there?
I think in terms of starting the game, I would still be going, if Barry Robson's not changing too much with the team and going kind of the same formation anyway, I think I'd still be going with that sort of front three of McMullen, Vaughan and Easton, because that's not been why we've been winning that game on Tuesday. Well, it is and it isn't. They should have been scoring a lot more goals, but they were creating loads of chances, and at the end of the day, as football managers will tell you and stuff like that, is as long as they're creating the chances, that means that they're doing something right. Rather than this time last season, we were playing games and losing games 1-0 and creating 3 shots in a game, and you're going, where's the creativity or where's the chances coming in the games going forward? Whereas now, we've went and scored 5 against Elgin, we've scored 2 against East Kilbride, which could have been 7 easily. So, I think with guys like McMullen, Easton, they're linking up well with Vaughan. It's just a case of you just need them to take their chances, and the result on Tuesday night last week completely changes. But in terms of this one, yeah, I think Richard Chin, for me, he clearly has got a bit of pace about him, a bit of trickery as well. I still think he's maybe somebody that I would just keep on the bench for now. And I think Robson's openly said he seems more of a project player than a starter for us. McMullen's more of a finished product, and we know what he does in this sort of level of football. He's won this division or gotten out of this division 3 times in the last 3 times he's played in it, as he said in his own interview. So I think in terms of that, I would just keep that front 3 together. And Lewis Gibson, to touch on that as well, he's somebody that I've been quite excited by when he has played, and more when he's been playing further forward rather than when he's filled in as a wing back or somewhere in midfield rather than in that front 3 or whatever. But he's somebody that just, when he comes on, he always just gives you 100% effort, and somebody that just runs at his fullback when he's out wide. And that's somebody that excites you. That's somebody that, that's what Dylan Easton does. He takes on his fullback. He's always looking to create something. And Lewis Gibson does that to a certain extent as well, because he's always, very rarely do I see Lewis Gibson receive the ball and then look to pass back to anybody. It's always, right, what can I do? Who can I run it? And then can I cross it? Can I shoot? And something else that I was also very impressed with first hand when I seen him in the flesh was that how good he was on both feet. Like, I was super impressed with that, because how many times do you see a footballer that literally is amazing on their right foot but can only just walk on their left foot? They can't even use it. And you go, well, surely as a full-time footballer you can practice like both feet. But it just seems to happen that some players have got it and some players didn't. But he seems to simply have 2 feet that he's so confident shooting or crossing, and both of them being... I mean, I think the first 2 games that I seen him, I didn't know what footed he was. Like, he was doing both of them just as well as each other. So I'd like to see him getting used more for the bench if that's where he's going to be most of the time as well. Otherwise, he falls into that category of Kai Montague of, do we try and get some players in and put them out on loan? Because I don't want another season of these 2 young lads who have both got promising futures to be wasted at our club by the fact that we're not playing them. And yeah, we'll need to see how it goes. But in terms of Tuesday night, I definitely think guys like Chin and Gibson would be great impact players to be bringing on. I mean, think of Jack Baird, for instance. If 75 minutes on the clock, it's 1-1, and he's starting to get tired. We've seen him at Morton and Ayr and St Mirren and all these clubs. He's not a player that's going to want somebody like Chin or Gibson sprinting at him in the 75th, 80th minute, and he's blowing out his arse. Like, that's not what he's wanting. So if we've got guys like that can come on and do that, or a Jack Hamilton that comes on and can kind of barge him about a wee bit like that, these are great options to have, and that's what I'm sort of hoping that Barry Robson is going to do more of, is be using these guys off his bench, because I know that's another criticism that the fan base has had, that the fact that he's not utilised his bench anywhere near enough. So hopefully going forward, that's something that he will do, and we'll have to see Tuesday night, I suppose.
Yeah, for me, with Gibble, I feel like people forget the sort of career that he's had so far, the experience he's had at Queen of the South, and the sort of the moments that he's had. I don't think he scored in the Scottish Cup last season away at Linlithgow, but he's not had a chance to really have any big moments yet, and I feel like he's the type of player that if you get him on the pitch, every so often he's the type that can stand up and ping one into the top corner from about 25-30 yards. He just needs the opportunity to be able to do it, but he's not going to get it if we're not utilising him and being able to kick on. I really hope that Barry Robson would sort of see that and being able to sort of get a bit more out of him by using him really effectively, because if he doesn't get on the pitch, he's always just going to be left as that sort of peripheral figure. Just going ahead, Leslie, Jack Hamilton, he came off the bench against East Kilbride. Do you think he's one potentially for a start as he's getting his sort of back to full fitness, if not sort of match readiness? Or do you think it's still a bit too soon with him? He had the cameo against East Kilbride, didn't really utilise his opportunity too much, but how much of that's down to fitness and his lack of game time?
I wonder how soon it is. I'm going to caveat this answer by assuming you're asking about Jack Hamilton, because those gulls have been fighting again outside, and we're threatening to knock. They're actually threatening to knock a chimney pot down. So I'm assuming you're talking about Jack Hamilton. I'm going to continue with the assumption that you are, which is that I was a bit disappointed with what we saw from him against East Kilbride, but I do not think that was his fault. I think that we had, to an extent, kind of lost shape a bit then, and for a team that were maybe trying to kind of get ahead and try and get back into the game, we weren't probably as organised and disciplined as I would have hoped. So I would say that was more a kind of systemic thing rather than a Jack Hamilton thing. I suspect it will boil down to fitness, whether the fact that we've now had a week effectively since the last game and whether that week has been enough for him to get his fitness back up. I think that might be the determining factor. There was a story in the press, which I think kind of shocked me, certainly, about the extent of the injury that he'd had. Really, really nasty stuff around how they'd had to effectively rebuild various bits of cartilage and things in his knee. And again, you just wonder how much of that was affecting him last season when he was playing with us. So I would love to see a fit and firing Jack Hamilton start, and whether that happens or not, I do not know. I actually do think, for what it's worth, I do think he will be fit enough and ready to start, and I think if we can get 60 minutes out of him, that would be really good. And I'd rather start with him and then take him off and then bring somebody else on later in the game if we can. Because again, I think he'll give another dimension to the attack. So we've seen against Elgin and East Kilbride with varying degrees of excess, different variations of reasonably small guys running about and playing things down the deck, and Easton, Vaughan, and kind of shifting things around between them. Hamilton will bring something different. Whether that means, my suspicion would be if he does come in, it would probably be for Paul McMullen, who is very quick and very direct, but maybe not that powerful. A little bit like Lewis Jameson, but with significantly more game intelligence and a rather less well-defined hairline. So yeah, I mean, as I say, I do have, for what it's worth, Jack Hamilton in my starting lineup for Tuesday. That was just based on vibes and not on anything else. I think if he's in from the start and he's part of a clearly defined game plan, I would love to see him up front alongside Lewis Vaughan. If we can get that to happen, it may still be too soon though. And
what would be the rest of your lineup, Leslie?
Right, so I am going with Josh Ray in goals. I am going with Gyro right back, Lewis Stevenson left back, Paul Hanlon, Callum Fordyce, Jordan Doherty in centre of defence. I'm then going with Scott Brown and Sean Byrne at the base of midfield. And I'm going with Jack Hamilton, Dylan Easton and Lewis Vaughan up top.
Leslie,
one little thing I will just chip in very briefly is, very often we've had this with Ian Murray as well, where there's something that seems like a very obvious change, and then we do it, and it doesn't work. And then we're about 20 minutes in the game, and we're all kind of like, that's why we don't do that. It's happened before with Murray, the times when we've shifted Stanton and Byrne and Brown about. I have a wee sneaking suspicion this might happen, but nonetheless, I'm sticking with it. I think Byrne and Brown at the base of midfield, Hamilton, Easton and Vaughan. And you're now going to tell me that I've got 12 or 13 people in my starting lineup, aren't you?
Well, I was just going to say that I've got exactly the same lineup as you written down, but I do wonder if we might go a bit more conservative in terms of a 3-5-2. And I mean, you could really keep the same lineup, but then you're just moving Easton more centrally and having Hamilton and Vaughan as out and out strikers. Again, it's who knows. And for you, Scott?
Yeah, I as I said earlier, I don't see Barry Robson changing his shape too much. And it seems to me, I think you were close enough with your 3-4-3. I think it is that sort of 3-4-3 or a 3-4-2-1 with McMullen and Easton kind of being sort of false tens, if you want to call it, or that they're like a free roam and can just go out wide and then cut inside and such. And then Vaughan's obviously your number 9. But in terms of an 11, I would probably go with it would probably be Lewis Stevenson for Mullen, Byrne for Matthews, and that would be the two changes I would make in that sort of formation. Yeah. So it would be the same formation we played Tuesday night, but it is literally just Stevenson's your left wing back and Byrne's in beside Brown in the midfield. And I think Byrne just gives you that much more experience and much more just solidity in the midfield. Again, nothing against Ross Matthews as a player. He's been brilliant for us, especially when he actually got more minutes under Robson in the second half of the season. Because there was chat sort of halfway through last season of, right, yes, it's his testimonial year and he's been a great servant, but is he what we need going forward if we want to be pushing up the league? And that was a genuine chat amongst a lot of the fan base. So it was good to see him kind of step up a level and kind of be more consistent at the end of the season. So yeah, and at the end of the day, if it is needed that Matthews needs to come on off the bench with 25 minutes to go or whatever, because Byrne has maybe not played a lot of football and needs just a break after 65 minutes, oh, so be it, because at the end of the day, you're going to be happy with Ross Matthews in the midfield as well. So yeah, and that's the only two changes I would make in terms of the lineup going forward.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's an intriguing one to keep an eye on. With Barry Robson, it could really be anything. I mean, it might be that we stick with the same starting lineup, but I would be very, very surprised, given the sort of information that's there about Lewis Stevenson and sort of the consistency and the level that he brings to the team. Les, you rightfully touched on, I was looking at that Jack Hamilton piece that was in the Courier, I believe. It's called a debridement. Again, genuinely never heard of that. But yeah, you said they scrape out the bone fragments that were floating about and had chipped away. They also had a micro fracture where they drilled little holes because the cartilage was damaged and they had to rebuild it with a fake cartilage. And then he had ligament reconstruction on the side. No wonder he was out every opportunity. It's just brutal for the guy. But hopefully that'll give him a clean run where he can, fingers crossed, kicked on, because he's saying in that article that it's been happening since his time with Livingston. So it must be incredibly frustrating when you can't put your finger on what's going on. And you just want to be able to get a consistent run of games, because that's how you be able to get the best out of them. So yeah, we'll see. Leslie, you've prepared for us a Should McStay or Should Dargo, much to Scott's dad's delight. He was thrilled at the fact that we were going to be getting grilled about this.
Right, yes, I have. So I've got a Should McStay or Should Dargo, or a SMOSD for short if you want to use the IKEA bookcase terminology. So as always, 6 questions, and I'm looking for any thoughts on who the player might be. So, question 1. I have scored 1 goal in league football across my whole career.
Okay. It is annoying probably for the listeners at this point, the fact that there is only me and Robbie currently guessing, so yeah, sorry that it's going to be quiet.
And I'm on mute as well, because we've now got a fox outside as well. Like, all the wildlife's coming to open this week, so I'm staying on mute because we do. Aye.
I'm going to go with Chris Silvestro. I think he's probably had more than one, but
not the worst guess, I don't think. 1 goal.
I'm going to go.
I don't know how many he scored. He definitely got 1 for us, but I don't know the rest of his career. He might have scored more than 1 for us, actually, but I don't know. Kevin Moon.
Okay. Question 2. My middle name is Dominic.
It's Dominic Silvestro. I'm just sticking. I've genuinely got no idea. So,
there's no point changing my guess, because whether his middle name's Dominic or not, I don't think that's going to change anything for what I think. Even the first one.
Okay. Question 3. I have played for teams within 2 miles of major rivers, including the Thames,
Here we go.
the Mersey, and the Eden.
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
So, I have played for teams within 2 miles of major British rivers, including the Thames, the Mersey, and the Eden.
You say the Mersey as well?
I was going to say Timmy Abraham for a second, but then Timmy's his middle name, is it not, or something daft? It's not actually called Timmy. His first name is completely different. Same with Tammy. Why not? I'll go for it anyway. Timmy Abraham.
Now just try to think of guys that have went down south, or we've brought up from down south.
Scott, I'm going to be completely honest. I'm just trying to rattle through these first clues as quickly as possible until we get one that we can actually get our teeth into.
not a clue. Because it... Where's he played in this? No, I genuinely don't even have a player that. So just skip.
Right. Question 4. In the only league football game that I scored in, I played alongside 5 players who played against the Rovers last season. So the one league football game that I scored in, I was playing alongside 5 players who played against the Rovers last season.
So who scored against Falkirk?
Just because you guys are going down the slightly wrong path, I did not say that I scored for the Rovers.
But to be honest, I wasn't going off that I thought he scored for it. I just was going, right, in his game that he scored. I didn't necessarily think it was going to be for us. But so the game he scored, he played with 5 players. That we've played in the Championship last season. Played against.
That's right, yeah.
Last season, yeah.
Aye.
Well, you would probably think the amount of players that were at Falkirk that we've had in the last couple of seasons, that's probably the team to think about, because, I mean, other than that, they're all pretty spread out.
This is tough. This is really tough.
He doesn't look like somebody that would have a middle name like Dominic, but again, everybody's got their own thoughts on names.
Passports.
To be honest, and I keep looking back at that clue about the Rivers as well. I'm like, God knows if he's played for teams around there either. But Tom Lang.
Sean Mackey.
Okay. Clue 5. I have won 2 major trophies in Scotland.
Trophies.
What are you classing as major trophies? As in like a league title at any league?
League title, Scottish Cup, League Cup. One of the big 3.
Right.
So you're classing like if they won League 2, that's a major for that?
No, I mean Premier League.
Oh, so they won the Prem?
League Cup or Scottish Cup. They've won 2 major trophies among Premier League, Scottish Cup and League Cup.
Okay, I'm starting to think this could be somebody that maybe won the double with St Johnstone.
Jason... Nah, I was going to say Jason Holt, but he... I was thinking he wasn't part of that St Johnstone double.
And Stephen Anderson's also scored more than one in his career.
We've had Callum Booth before, I think.
Have we? And also, we keep saying somebody's going to throw eventually somebody back into the fold. The only reason I say St Johnstone double team is just because, like, 2 major trophies, you would think that it's going to be probably cups rather than... I don't think it's going to be somebody that's played for, like, Celtic or Rangers and won a league. But then they could have easily then moved about to two different teams that have won cups. But then again, Celtic have won how many trebles in that time?
Les, I'm just going to ask a question. Where on earth is the River Eden?
Is that not up by Perth?
It's
or am I
in-
being that here?
It's in the
Me and Scott are
northwest.
just like, no idea.
It's in the northwest of England.
Oh, right.
Right.
I'm miles off.
North of the Mersey.
Right. So you're talking about like Carlisle, Preston.
Regan Andrews scored more than one goal.
Aye.
Tranmere. And again, if it's somebody for the 90s or whatever, I've probably not got much chance of getting this because I've only started watching them since basically the turn of the turn of the century.
I feel like we need an era clue.
Actually, Blair will be screaming for that when he's listening poolside in Florida.
Aye.
Era clue.
Punched a hole in a plane window because of Leslie.
Okay, clue 6. I am a full international.
Full international.
And so, so this, I was going to say somebody else, but this player played last season, you're saying?
Not.
Oh, no,
in
sorry. You're
Scotland.
saying the goal they scored in, the goal was against players that played against us last season. You're not saying they necessarily played
that's
last
right.
season.
Paniotto? I mean, would you count play? Well, nah, he's not won two
He's scored
major
more than one
trophies
goal,
in Scotland. Aye. Oft. I
Do
genuinely
you have a
scuppered
clue
by this.
7, or is this it?
I do. I have a clue 7.
Okay.
Oh, thank.
I mean, clue 7 is going to be a buzzer beater, or whatever they call it, a Reese the buzzer.
Yeah.
I
Clue,
don't care.
clue 7. I am ginger.
Oh, David Bates?
No.
Clearly not.
My God. Oh my God.
Okay, clue 8. I am a right back.
Jason Thompson.
Oh, Jason? No. When's he
Nah,
played
he's
for
had
Scotland?
I was about to say. No one two major
Yeah,
trophies.
he-
Leslie, what have you done?
Clue 9. I was signed in emergency after the previous occupant of my position was deleted and never spoken about again.
James Brown.
Yes.
Oh, my
shit.
God, Leslie. You're never doing another Should McStay or Should.
Forgettable, look, to be fair. Like,
It's the most beige footballer alive. Jesus.
oh, now actually, when he says the Rivers, he played for Marine, eh?
Oh, I didn't
I
care.
for Marine.
I
Aye.
genuinely couldn't care. What a low point to end this episode on, Leslie. I'm fuming.
There's a reason that went to question 9, by the way.
Aye.
You were really close, Scott, when you
Not
said,
disappointed, just
when you said you did the
apoplectic
double with St
for rage.
Johnstone, I thought you were about to
I
get it.
refuse that anybody gets that before clue 6. Like,
So, I suppose he was part of the double team, I'm guessing.
He was.
For
So
St
he was part of the
Johnstone,
double
was it?
team.
And
The
only
only
goal against
senior goal he
Rangers.
scored was against Rangers, yep.
Aye.
there's surely nobody
And on
is getting that
shuddering,
before clue 6. Surely.
shuddering low point of an episode. I'm going to bring this to a close. The game better be better than this. I'm just absolutely raging, Leslie. You've ruined my Sunday evening, and I'm going to go to my bed and cry now. No, I'll be a bit less mean spirited. But if your seagulls do dive bomb you, I'm just going to say it. You probably deserve it. Anyway, thank you for taking the time to listen. I'm going to try and be less bitter about this. Be a bit more accepting of Leslie. That was a fine smozzed, very difficult, and yes, needless to say, I'm not taking it well. But yeah, thank you again for listening. We will see you in the post-match episode, but bye for now.